Hello, everyone. This is Hank Setala and Casey Macbride with another thing of stir crazy shamans that have found cool technology to play with.
So much fun.
Yes. So that was just a cool little video that I found out that I could play before we start. So, welcome everybody to another Stir Crazy Shamans. You can go back and kind of look at our intros from the past videos. We don't want to have to give our introductions every single time that we come on. But needless to say, both of us are shamans from very different backgrounds that are just coming together to talk about possibilities, especially with the current time. This is a daily broadcast right now. When things go back to the new normal, whatever that is, we'll still do it. Maybe not every day, because we'll have our regular things kind of normalizing, but we want to be on as often as possible. And if you have any comments, you can certainly offer your comments and we can speak to them. But today we are going to be talking about fear.
Fear, yes. Um, I think that's an excellent topic in these times when there is a lot of fear of scarcity and uncertainty in the world. I think it's important for us to not get too caught up on focusing on all of the craziness and fear, but we also need to talk about it because it is something that we all experience as humans from time to time. Excellent topic for today.
Yeah, and I am kind of an acronym nerd when it comes to fear. There's so many great acronyms that are kind of great ways to help you get out of the normal place that you're in when you're thinking about fear. My most new favorite one, which I'll share with you today. Let me see here.
Hello,
Oh,
Shirley.
that's my sister actually. Is this one feeling excited and ready? I got this from Neil Donald Walsh, and it was just if you go on Amazon Prime, there was like these free talks where Neil would just bring people up on stage and process them live on camera. And one of the acronyms that he said in one of these shows was feeling excited and ready. I'm like, wow, that's like the best little acronym I've ever heard for fear. And part of the reason for that, if you look at, there's a guy named Dr. Dane here. He wrote a book called Being You, Changing the World. And he talks about how when you're a child, and you might be in line to go look at your very first merry-go-round or amusement park ride, and you're all excited, right? And what do your parents do? They say, "Now, honey, don't be afraid." And as a child, even like situations like that, we start to misidentify excitement and fear. And then as we continue to go throughout our lives, sometimes we feel what we're thinking is fear, but in reality, it's excitement. And so that's the first thing I wanted to touch on is like, what are you really feeling? If you start asking yourself that question, am I afraid? Am I excited? And one very recent example. Fortunately, we just went to Disney World this past December. I'm glad we didn't wait since all the parks are closed down now. But my one oldest son, Max, he was never wanting to go any of the rides with us. We would always get to the thing and he wouldn't want to go on, and we would end up swapping. And my wife and Oliver would go on, and then I would go on again with Oliver, and she would stay with Max. And I asked him finally at one of the more speedy rides, like called Slinky Dog. I asked him, "Are you afraid? Are you excited?" And it really took him out of the place where he was reacting from. And he's like, "I'm excited, Daddy." And then he went on the ride, and then he couldn't get enough of them. And so, really, where are we paralyzed with what we think is fear, but it's really excitement, and we're just doing what we were told to do when we're afraid, which is run and hide.
And I think we always hear the term fear of the unknown, right? That's one of the greatest fears that people have is the fear of the unknown. And I think maybe a lot of the time it is actually excitement that we're feeling over the possibility of learning something new. And when we are especially exploring the realms of spirit, there's a lot of unknown for a lot of people in the beginning, especially. And so I have a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm a little afraid to start journeying. I'm afraid of what I might experience or what I might uncover about myself or what truths I might encounter. And yeah, I don't think that's really fear people are feeling. I think you're correct. I think that's more excitement, because it could be anything. You don't know what worlds are about to open up in front of you. So yeah, I think people get overly excited and they do misidentify that as fear. So I agree, absolutely.
Right. Right. And one of the things when it comes to fear too, that our ego, which is another acronym, since I'm an acronym nerd, edging God out. I like that one. The ego's job is to keep us safe, and the ego only has past data to draw upon. So it's always going on past data instead of when you're looking at your intuition and your knowing as an infinite being. when you're looking at those types of things, you're looking forward into possibility, and the ego can't handle that. And it's like, oh no, I know that the ego will let you relive your worst day ever because it knows you survived it, and it will help you reason into going back into the same, what seems to be a different choice, but it's really the same choice. And that's where we get these cycles and patterns where people get trapped into what they feel is insanity because they're choosing the same thing, expecting a different result, but they're kind of reasoning into the same thing that's really just a little bit of a different package, but it's the same choice. And ego's really good at that, and helping you to justify and reason away possibility instead or in place of what it feels is safety.
And all fear does come from the ego. You know, we don't experience fear as a true experience of spirit. And when we really get down to it, if you pay attention in the moment, and I think this is sort of like a big remedy to any of these negative emotions like fear that we experience, in the moment when you're experiencing fear, if you can, just even for a split second, sort of step back a little bit and take notice, what is it that I'm actually feeling? You may notice, of course, there's a lot of thoughts flowing through the head, and you're thinking about, you know, whatever, this could go wrong, that could go wrong, or because of the past, this, blah, 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 all of that, all the things that the mind comes up with in the moment. But really look at the feeling of fear. Really, they may just be really simple sensations in your body. Now, there may be a tightness in your chest, your heart's beating fast. Two really simple sensations. Maybe your shoulders are a little more tense. You know, maybe your breathing is different. But these are all just physical sensations that we're experiencing. And when those physical sensations become combined with a thought in the head, it's as if the physical sensations fuel the thoughts, and then the thoughts fuel the physical sensations. And then there's this like feedback loop that we can spiral out of control with so often. But in that moment, if you recognize that it is just a feeling in your body, it is just a fleeting thought in the head, in that moment of seeing, of pure seeing, oftentimes that fear will just sort of dissolve. And it can happen really easily and effortlessly. But a lot of people have difficulty with, I think it's a good idea to practice that kind of awareness when you're not in a fearful situation, so that it becomes more second nature and you can try when you are having a fearful experience.
Right. And really the only thing sometimes when you're afraid of things, really what it is you shut down your awareness and you're choosing not to look at something. And it can also be your body acknowledging something that you, the being, are aware of, but are unwilling to acknowledge. So the body's getting tense because it knows, but the being's just like, I'm looking the other way because it's more comfortable to not know that. And then you're having the sensation of fear because you're just shutting down your awareness for something that you really don't want to know about.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, you know, fear, I think, ties into like anxiety, right? Anxiety is a problem that affects so many people that I know personally, and I've dealt with a lot myself. You know, I think feeling anxiety is sort of like a perpetual state of being in that contracted, fearful experience. We're like constantly in that fight or flight mode of fear. And like you said, for a lot of people, there may not be a particular thought or something, a fearful experience that they're focused on. It could just be the bodily sensations. So yeah, maybe expand on that a little bit, on what you mean about the attention being elsewhere as the body is contracted to fear. Maybe you could elaborate.
Right. Well, there's two things on that. One is simply the matrix. There's sometimes that we're aware of something that we really wish we weren't aware of, and we push it out of our reality. And the reason why we do that is more because we're judging whatever our awareness is as good or bad or right or wrong or whatever the case may be. We've judged it as something, and because of that judgment, it's no longer comfortable, and then we push it out of our awareness. All the while, the body is its job is to be the sensory apparatus in this reality of picking up all these different things. And so just because the being chooses not to acknowledge the awareness, the body still can acknowledge it. And so you could have the physical sensations or the body reacting to something that you're aware of, but the being is just kind of turning a blind eye. The second part of that could be that as empaths and people who have a lot of awareness, a lot of times what we're feeling isn't ours at all. And you could be picking up on the anxiety and the excitement and whatever from somebody else, your next door neighbor or a friend, relative, anything like that. And to take a step back and say, well, is this mine? And if not, return to sender with consciousness or whatever tool you'd like. And if it is yours, then it's like, well, what's really the truth behind this? Because once you really become aware of what it is, usually that anxiety feeling will fall away, and you just have the excitement feeling because you're now in full awareness of what's going on and you can make a choice.
And I think the empath thing affects way more people than people there are that recognize that that's what's happening to them. And I know for myself, I'm an empath, and I've always been very sensitive to energy as well as the energy of people's emotions. And so my whole childhood, I went through life experiencing a whole huge range of emotions every time I would encounter different people in crowds, especially. And it can, I think, set up from an early age some really unhealthy thought patterns, so emotional patterns, or whatever you want to call it. Because if we don't recognize that all of these emotions that we're feeling aren't ours, if we've never been taught that it's possible to feel anything outside of our own body, then we believe that all those emotions are ours. And it can take years for a person like myself to recognize that no, every fleeting little emotion that I feel as I pass a person is not my own experience. And really learning that and validating that, that can really help people to move on. And then we don't, because it's one thing to experience the emotions of another person. It's another thing to experience that, believe it's yours, and then carry it with you throughout the day. When we recognize that's not mine, I'm just feeling that because someone else is feeling that, then I think when we distance ourselves from that person, we can much more easily just let it go. I think that's big.
Right. Social distancing your way from the other person. Right? No, but as empaths, though, one of the things that a little trick when an empath looks to check in with somebody, like say you're looking to check in with a family member who lives in another state or something like that, one of the ways that we do that is we kind of expand our energy field out to meet that person. And when you do that as an empath, you're opening up yourself to everything that's between here and wherever that person is. Another way you can do it is just to bring the essence of that person to you, and that way you're only connecting with the one person that you're wanting to connect with instead of everybody between here and there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know when I do distance healing, for example, I think it's sort of a hybrid between the two, because I know I'm not consciously like really reaching out to that person, but at the same time, I'm not consciously bringing them to me. I just kind of disconnect and I don't know if it's a midway kind of meeting thing, or if I am really bringing them to me. I guess I've never really thought about it in that way before.
Yeah. Or you could also be doing something dimensionally or in a different realm perhaps and things like that, but not everybody is off in different realms like you are. and some
they could be if they wanted
could
to.
Be. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that things like that occur, but I know that one thing that I know my friend Ryan talks about in his empathic empowerment training courses is that the empaths will sometimes just expand their bubble out so far to connect with something, and then all of a sudden get overwhelmed because they're picking up a whole bunch of things. And then one of the things too is what you resist persists. So as empaths and people who are aware, we're taught to shield. And shielding is a tool that is used sparingly. I think of it like if a house is burning, right? You get a blanket, you put water on it, you put it around yourself, you get out of the house. You don't wear the blanket forever, right? So as an empath, you're like, if you get blindsided, definitely, do what you need to do. But the idea would be that you can be in the space of sensing these emotions instead of taking them on. And the difference is being aware of an energy without labeling it or judging it. When you're in that space, that it's just simply an awareness and you're not giving it any value or weight other than having the awareness of it. Once you label the thing that you're experiencing as fear, anxiety, oh, that's wrong, that guy's creepy, whatever the thing is. Now, once you've labeled it, they say you name it, you claim it. And that's when it has a deeper impact on the empath versus just an awareness of it.
And everything we experience, whether it's fear, the most intense fear and suffering, or the most supreme love and joy, they're all just experiences. And as far as consciousness, the oneness, the isness that allows these experiences to be is concerned, if we could say is concerned, they're all equal. all experience is as it is. Like you said, when we come, the only bad experiences we have are the ones we label as bad in our mind. And all the concepts of good, evil, light, darkness, all of that, those are all just words in our head. There is a direct experience that we have. Those experiences are true. But when we call something bad or unpleasant or suffering or whatever we call it, that's all up here. That's just thoughts and feelings in the body. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's more pleasant to experience love and joy and all of that. But when if we don't spend as much time focusing on the ideas of fear and suffering and anxiety, and instead, if we experience them, we experience them. When they're gone, they're gone. And that will drastically reduce the amount of suffering you'll experience due to the experience of whatever sensations you were feeling in the moment.
But they say pain is pain, but suffering is a choice, because the pain's just in the moment, and once it's done, it's done. And the reliving it or the dwelling on it is where we create our own internal suffering. And that's what happens when we become fragmented. If you talk about soul retrievals and things of that nature, when you have an experience that knocks you so far off center that now all you can do is dwell on it, or you completely shut it out. Either way, you're you're fragmenting yourself and not being completely in the moment if that's happening to you.
This is I have worked with soul retrieval for a long time, but I'd never how to explain it. I've never had the training or like the language to explain it. So learning about this stuff and the way you're talking about how, for me, when I would practice soul retrieval for myself, it was the experience of like going out, finding this fragmented piece, releasing it from the experience, bringing it back. But even what I just said there, I couldn't have explained it like that. So I love that you have the words, and I'm learning the words to explain this sort of experience.
Right. Well, in the South American tradition, they believe that when you have, and the very first soul loss that a being experiences is being cut from the mother. And so the very first thing that an infant would happen, that would happen in Peru when a baby's born, is they would do a special ceremony to do a soul recovery for the infant for being cut from the mother. Maybe for the mother too, because there's a lot of things involved with that. And they believe that the soul piece is cared for and it waits there until you're ready for having it to be reintegrated. And there's different techniques. We'll get to that in the Shaman Apprenticeship program that we're going to be in. But I wanted to give you a little bit more context that that's kind of how they frame all that, is when you have a soul fracture, it's not like it's just off and alone. It's being cared for by mother. And when you're ready to have it back, she's more than happy to help reintegrate that for you as soon as we're ready to be whole again.
See, that's a much better way of looking at it. The way I always had kind of explained it to people was that because a lot of people are sort of afraid, I think, when they hear like there's a soul fragment, we're going to do soul retrieval. They go, well, if it's causing me so much fear and worry and all that, then why do I want it back inside of me? And I've heard that from certain people I've worked with. But the way I kind of like to explain that is the only time that soul fragment can be causing you suffering is when it is attached to that experience, that trauma. And when we've removed it and reintegrated it into you, it's just a part of your being, your energy field. And it's like you said, it's when it's within you and a part of you, it's you, and that you can control that, and it's just your whole. But it's only when it's fragmented, stuck in some sort of traumatic experience, some corner of space-time, that it causes the issues. That's kind of the way I generally would explain it.
Right. I think of it this way, like if you're an infinite being and you're ignoring or not acknowledging one part of your experience, there's no way you can ever be functioning from wholeness, because part of you is stopped in time and space, even though time and space is an illusion, but that's a whole nother topic. But part of you is frozen in time and space for whatever reason. And what gifts could that moment have for you if you were willing to look at it, become whole with it? Could you help other people that might have had that same experience to move past things that might have tripped you up in the past?
So this just kind of came into my awareness, but I personally have experienced this, and I know other people that sort of develop, going back to what we were talking about of like empaths, traveling too far out and then becoming overwhelmed when experiencing the energy of other people. On the other side of that, I've myself and with others run into the experience of becoming almost like an energetic germaphobe, to where people are afraid to interact with other people, to perform healing on people, or to really have in-depth connections with people, because they're afraid of picking up fearful or negative energy from people, unpleasant energies from people, and so they kind of shut down, and they become like they become like a germaphobe or an energetic agoraphobe, so to speak. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
One, let's give you another acronym for Satan: seeing anything as negative. Right? Have you ever heard that one?
No.
Yeah, seeing anything as negative. See, right there, when with healers, if you're judging the person that you're about to work on because it's icky or something like that, like that's coming from a place that would be a time to stop back and like, okay, well, what's really the truth? Because at the end of the day, God is all there is, all at once in the ever-present moment of now. I am that. That is another aspect of me. Though we are separate in this duality, we are of the same animated essence of the universe. And so in that context, there is no good or bad energy. So like, what is it that's so distasteful? What is it in my own soul that I'm not willing to look at, or I'm afraid that that's going to resonate in me, and then I'm going to have to deal with my own shit?
I like that a lot. Yes, I think it often is. It's our own experience that we're afraid of, and not something coming from another person. Because if the only way you can experience a really intense fear or negative emotions from another person is if that resides within you. If someone came along, they can't. I don't think anyone can inject somehow their own fearful experience into you. You have to have something that resonates with them.
No.
Agree.
And the way that we explain that in shamanism, in this Peruvian way, that we have something called the palpable, which would be akin to an aura, a little bit different, and nothing can come in or out of your bubble. The direct translation for this would be bubble, without your permission on some level. And so it's either with your conscious permission or your other than conscious permission. So say you were bullied on the bus when you were 3 and you never dealt with that, and as a result of that, you now notice and you have the experience of being bullied all the time. It's not that you're consciously inviting people to bully you, but because you have this energy that you never dealt with, it's kind of like there's a tint on your bubble, and things that match that can enter in commission. It's kind of like Star Trek. If you know the frequency of the deflector shield, you can shoot right through it, right? So if you have your own unresolved boulders or cellular memory, whatever word you want, your shadow that you haven't worked with, those things make similar things come up in your experience more frequently, and you notice it and have a resistance to it, not because you're resisting the other person necessarily, but you have your own stuff that you're desperately, the ego's like, I don't want to go there. Don't want to go there. Let's look at anything else. And that's why meditation can be so hard for people, because that's like heaving all those boulders up. And many people who've never practiced meditation, they start for the first time, they can feel more anxious and chaotic when they first start. Especially if they're not given tools as these things come up to deal with them and to transmute them instead of trying to shove them down again.
A really cool tool for sort of self-reflection and meditation that could be really intense for people who have never done any kind of inner work before. But if you're looking to really address these issues and get over them, is a sensory deprivation tank. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of these.
I haven't, but some of the greatest work has come from those.
I think I've done it about 20 times now. And for me, because I have experience with meditation, what I noticed was pretty quickly, as the sensations of the body and your hearing and sight and all that, as you realize all that is sort of dissipated, it was like the thoughts and emotions were amplified, but also at the same time, my awareness that that's not who I am. I'm the underlying isness was also amplified. And so I sort of noticed this, it was like a zooming out. So like the thoughts and emotions are doing their thing, and then they just started to drift further and further away until they're out so far away from me. It was like, I kind of knew they were happening, but I was just there as that total, that oneness, that isness. And so, yeah, I think if you're, but I know other people who've gone to these experiences who they said they hated it their first time. They said it was really uncomfortable. They came out of there more agitated than before they went in. And I think that's because when there's nothing coming in on the sensory level at all, you're forced to deal with whatever it is floating through your fields. And for a lot of people, that can be an uncomfortable experience when we do have more fear than we realize we're carrying.
Yeah. And there's one tool from if you're going to start really wanting to look at things, it comes down to a single question. You ask yourself, when have I ever been unloving to myself or to another? And if you look at that question and see what percolates up, that's going to bring up 90 some percent of the things that are going to come up when you start having an experience in isolation or a silent retreat weekend, and you really go after that. And then you ask the question, who was affected by that? And this is what you do in basically 12-step work. You ask the questions about all the wrongs that you've done, quote unquote wrong. It's really just, when have you acted something other than your highest self, is the question. And then who was affected by that, and whether you do an active or passive transmutation of that energy, like an amends or just doing work energetically, it's then taking that gunk that you've identified and working with it to make it of a lighter expression, to turn that hucha, as we call it in shamanism, into sami, from heavy to light.
I love having the word hucha now, because working with people doing healing sessions, I always had to try and grasp at different ways to explain hucha, which is, hey, you could probably explain it better than I can. But
yeah, it just means heavy, literally.
Heaviness, right?
Yeah.
So I would say, I would tell people had removed this energy that wasn't supposed to be there. What is it? It's just this dense, heavy-ish, sticky stuff, and it was kind of just grasp at words. So I like to have that hucha. It just sounds nice and.
Right. and Zane explains hucha like chocolate. So you got like your white chocolate hucha, which is like kind of light and it's easy to deal with, and you got your milk chocolate, and you got your dark chocolate, which is the harder stuff. And you can deal with it all. And Mother Earth loves it all. If you just want to give it to her, for her, it's fertilizer, and she uses it to grow blessings for you. So whatever heaviness that you have, all you have to do is ask for her to take it from you, and she's more than happy to take it and work with it and transmute it from the shamanic perspective, anyhow.
I've come across this with a lot of people, and the way Zane explains that is beautiful, and it's helped me to explain it for other people. But so many people, when grounding or when sort of they're aware that they can move this heaviness out of their body, maybe either they've learned about it or just subconsciously they've remembered how to do that. There are a lot of people that are hesitant to give it to Mother Earth because they realize Mother Earth is this conscious and sacred and alive, and they think, why would I want to give all my crap to Mother Earth? I don't want to give her that. I love the earth. So I love Zane's way of explaining it, talking about how it's like you said, it's fertilizer. It's like candy to the earth. She loves it, and she grows miracles from it. So yeah, absolutely, the earth loves that.
Right, and we actually have a question from Shirley, and so just about what our different backgrounds are. It's the one time we don't go into our backgrounds and someone asks. So, well, first, let's talk about the word shaman. Shaman, it refers to one very specific tradition from the Siberian region of Russia. And then in England, at some point, they got lazy and they just labeled any native tradition under the umbrella of shamanism. So any native tradition is technically a shaman, whether it's a Lakota tradition or a tradition from Africa or the tradition that I practice from Peru. So all Pacos are shaman, not all shaman are Pacos. And there's just a couple things that are consistent across the board in shamanism, so that every shaman believes that everything is one in the terms of being part of this animated essence, this Kausai Pacha, this field of living energy. So even a rock, though not conscious from in awareness like we are necessarily, it's still part of this animating essence, and thus alive, even though it's not alive, if that makes sense. And then the other components of shamans is to be in the ability to be in the world but not of it, to walk like though we're in this middle world, having the ability to stretch themselves and access things from the Hanak Pacha, which is the upper world in this tradition, or the Uhu Pacha, the underworld, and you're accessing all that and working with other people in this Kausai Pukliai, this game of life that we're playing. And that's really what the role of shaman is. And their job is to, as you work with people, to redistribute the life energies through this. So like you mentioned, you were removing the hucha from a client. Your job is to take the energies that are heavy in one area and redistribute them where it may not be heavy, because it's all a matter of point of view. Angel heaviness is light for us, and our heaviness is light for the underworld. So it's all a matter of point of view and reference point. And Casey is a bit naturally taught. He was always just had a direct dialogue with spirit. And in my tradition, there's a very specific term for that when someone's chosen by spirit and the spirit world is teaching them directly. It's an Altomasiok, which is a fourth level priest, and they're ones that can communicate. And there's even one more specific than that, but I can't remember the word. It has to do with the Wilika Kamasic, the sacred lightning bolt, but I can't remember the specifics of it. But it's basically someone that is chosen from spirit to be a shaman. And then normally, if you grew up in Peru, Casey, you would have been brought in and taught and gone through the initiations, because like, oh, nature picked him. Let's teach him.
Oh yeah, and I so wish that would have been the case. Well, I know I'm glad that I'm here where I am. I wouldn't trade my experiences for anything, but things would have been a lot easier if that had been the case. If I was in Peru, I'll just say that. But yeah, I guess the way that I always think about it, and something I say from time to time, is a little simpler way to put all that is, for me, a shaman is like the bridge between the worlds, right? So I'm here in the physical body, but I'm able to perceive, see, and communicate with spiritual beings and perceive the energies of the upper worlds, the middle world, the lower worlds. By the way, we call these worlds like upper world, middle world, and lower world, but there aren't just three. There's an infinite number of realms out there. We categorize them into upper, middle, and lower based on sort of the vibrational frequency of each plane. But yeah, I am. I couldn't call myself like a Peruvian or North American or any particular kind of shaman, because, like you said, I was chosen by spirit, and I say chosen by spirit because at the time it definitely didn't feel like my choice, because I was in a much different place and I was focused on completely different things, and spirit was like, nope, it's time to wake up, buddy. And so yeah, and I say that I was like thrown into the realms of spirit. I mean, I went from like being just this normal kind of like teenage kid to having intense experiences of spirit that most people either only have like after they die, or have to train for like a lifetime to try and experience. And it was just like, boom, this is happening. So yeah, so that path of, I don't know what the word for it was, the
Ultima Saug. It's a fourth level priest, but there's a specific one there. Beyond that, there's a specific thing that is a signal that someone was chosen by spirit. So Ultima Saug you can be initiated into without being chosen necessarily, but it has to do with like the Welika Kamasic, the sacred lightning bolt. I just don't remember the exact thing. I have to ask Zane.
But yeah, but it's not it's not something that I think everyone. I'm very grateful, and I'm so grateful for all of the experiences I've ever had, and now I experience so much more peace, love, joy, and aliveness. And I'm not just a three-dimensional being here. I experience a multitude of worlds and have incredible experiences without having to do anything all that extraordinary to me. But there was a lot of suffering in order to get to this place that I had to go through. And don't get too hung up on thinking you need to be like chosen and forced there like I was. Take your time and enjoy the process of slowly learning these things.
Right. And the biggest thing is, if you want to learn these things, if you just put out that you're open and willing, and you start taking actions towards that, because actions speak louder than words, right? If you want a new job and you say, hey, universe, I want a new job, and you do nothing on your own, it will take 2 years, but you'll get laid off eventually, right? or you could say, universe, I want a new job, and you do a resume and you do your part, and the universe can actualize things for you way more quickly if you actually are engaged with the experience of creation instead of just waiting for it to fall in your lap.
Right. So the lightning bolt thing, I don't know if that's anything you can touch on or expand on a little more. Zane keeps telling me, because throughout these experiences, there have been times when in my journeys, like really powerful journeys, where I was directly actually struck by lightning and like had like huge, massive upgrades in my body. And I was telling Zane about that, and he was like, oh, wow. And he said, you're doing the apprenticeship? And I go, yeah. And he goes, oh, that's awesome. So he just kind of left me hanging on that. So I think I've got a little bit more of an understanding now of why he was excited to hear that.
Right. Well, in Peru, normally the way nature selects you, and I don't think this was your exact physical experience, is you get struck by lightning 3 times, and then afterwards, like you're just open, and they take you, and usually you're deformed, you can't walk too well. But but they figured if you get hit by lightning once, then if you don't get hit a couple more times, you're dead anyway. So they just leave you on the mountain, and then when you get struck 2 more times, then they take you in and train you. But there's other people that, like, if you're just connected, like a Pampa Masayo, they're trained in their ritual. They know all the things are happening. They do all the ceremony, but they don't have the connection to actually speak with the spirits and have that one-on-one dialogue. And for them, if I do anything wrong in this despacho ceremony, now it might not work. With an Alta Masayo, you can do 100% things wrong, because the ceremony isn't as relevant as the connection and the energy, and they work together. They both they have a medicine for people, and they work together. They don't look at each other in a hierarchy of one is better or not as better, or any not as better. I can't talk. One is, they're not comparing each other in terms of superiority. They believe that they each have their place, and they each have a medicine for the world, depending where that person's at.
Yeah, and I just noticed we had. She was wondering about the difference between us, and it was interesting. And see, the difference is just I think how we got introduced to the world of shamanism as far as the shamanic practice stuff goes. But I think for us, a lot of the underlying experiences are very much similar or the same as far as our communication with spirit and our experiences of energy. But it's just how the way we were introduced, I guess, would be the biggest difference.
And for anybody else on Facebook or YouTube or Periscope, wherever you're picking up the feed from, you're more than welcome. If you make a comment, we're going to see it here, and we can speak to the questions that are in your head and or on your mind, and we can speak to that, answer your questions, and take the conversation wherever you go. We always like to start with the topic and circle it back to that, but really this is more than just me and Casey talking to each other. It's supposed to be an experience where we're engaging you and hopefully being a contribution for what's going on in your world. So thank you for being here too. Or make a comment for our topic for tomorrow, because we're going to do this again and again and again, and we'll do other topics for other days. So let us know what you are interested in. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, if you have any questions as far as shamanic work, that's great. But really anything, I think we just enjoy talking about all of our experiences of spirit. And I know for me, I did have to learn the hard way about a lot of this stuff, like the really hard way sometimes. So if I can share a little bit of my experience and make things a little bit easier and make something click for someone, even if it's just in the moment, then that makes me very happy. So yeah, please ask as many questions as you have.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to share people I've always been intuitive my whole life. And then as soon as I could legally drink, I became a professional drinker for many years and made it very hard on myself. But coming out of that, I had a friend, Dave Orlasky, who gifted me this amazing set of chumpy stones. And it's a very special set of stones in the Peruvian tradition that are used to weave these belts of energy. And I was like, well, what do you do with them? And he's like, I have no idea. So he bought them kind of like a touristy thing, knowing they were for healing, but he had no clue how to use them. And that's when I just started looking for a teacher, because whatever they were, I knew this is for me, whatever this is. And then I found Zane, and he's like, well, I can teach you how to use those, but it's part of an apprenticeship, and it's like the 6th weekend. And I'm like, oh man, it's just me. I want to just learn this one thing. So I ended up hosting them for a couple 1 and 2 day workshops, and then eventually the Shaman Apprenticeship program. And now we're going on our 3rd time hosting them for 7 weekends of outdoor nature fun.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited for this. And for anyone who is interested in this stuff that we're talking about, shamanism, I've taken these spirit lodges with Zane, which aren't a part of the apprenticeship, but it's him kind of teaching general tools for how to connect with spirit and gain information and heal ourselves in a more intuitive way without being particularly focused on one tradition. But I got the feeling from Zane. I mean, he is a powerful guy. He has very powerful energy, but he's so grounded, and he has just such a beautiful. The words flow effortlessly and easily through him. He's really amazing. So if anyone's interested in learning about this stuff, I think it would behoove you to check out the Apprenticeship for sure.
Right. And the apprenticeship is being reconstructed as we speak because of the whole COVID-19 thing. We're probably going to have to push us back a little bit. But what we were going to start next this month is we're going to start like it's a Tehuanthan Mesa class, and basically it's the first level because there's 4 different priesthoods in this tradition. It's some of the things from the first level tradition that we're going to offer as like an introduction to the work. For anybody in the program, it's going to be included as part of your guys' experience, but it's kind of give us something virtually to do while we're waiting to actually get out and start the work. And it's going to give other people who aren't a part of the apprenticeship yet an opportunity to have an experience with Zane and build a little Tehuanthan Mesa. Tehuanthan just means 4 corners, or 4. Tehuanthan is 4, and so Tehuanthan Huayra is the 4 winds. Tehuanthan Mesa is a 4-corner mesa, and also get a little homework to go out into nature to find some stones to put in the mesa and stuff like that. So that's going to be coming up in April on the first weekend of the apprenticeship, because we're right now it's looking as though we're going to have to move the apprenticeship, the actual in-person start time, till May, and then we are going to double up throughout the program. It's 7 weekends. We might double up some of the weekends, or 1 month meet twice and catch up, but we don't want to not start. So this is kind of like a great thing Zane and I were talking about this morning, where we can still start virtually, and then maybe also include other people who aren't ready for the apprenticeship but want a little bit more of the Paco tradition and some of the tools that come with that.
And I think shamanism and exploring shamanism in any way, whether that's just picking up a book or watching these kinds of videos, is an excellent thing for anyone who's looking to sort of learn a little bit more about their own experience, or the experiences of spirit that they may be curious about or have had themselves, because we do encourage or I don't know if encourage is the right word, but the way that we learn about all this stuff is through direct experience. And like in traditional religions, like, which can be great for a lot of people for finding peace and learning about themselves. But a lot of these religions are, it's someone said it was this way, so you do this, this, and this, and that's how you get here. Whereas in shamanism, it's, okay, we're going to give you some general guidelines of how to get into the space to have these experiences, but then you go out on your own and you communicate with spirit, you experience the energy, and you learn for yourself directly. And I think that's why this is so powerful for so many people.
Well, the apprenticeship, Zing kind of does a hybrid approach. We do the initiations, but he does give some context, because literally in Peru, when he got his initiations, they would go out and do it, and they would give him nothing else. It was up to you to go figure out what just happened. And they gave you no context at all. And so for the Western mind, we do the initiations, but then we come back in the classroom, but he teaches it in a very loose way, where it's to give context, but not to limit the experience. And one of the greatest examples, I love this story about one of his teachers. They were making despachos, right? And the despacho is this offering where you have different things you put in, like candles for Pachamama's birthday, or you have chocolate, and you put in a little llama fat, all these different things. And the Paco, the teacher, was building one, and then he told the student, "Okay, now do it how I did it." And the guy goes and starts duplicating it, right? And the teacher knocks everything off the rock and says, "No, I said do it how I do it." And he starts doing the same thing again, and no, and the guy finally got it, that it was to do it from the heart and not to duplicate the teacher exactly. And they give a lot of freedom, especially in the Southern tradition, that in some areas they don't even call in the same spirits at the beginning. Like we always do Pachamama, which is Mother Earth, and then Mother Water. In some tradition or some villages, they call in Mother Water first, and they don't look at that as a wrongness. It's just that they do it a little differently, because that's how the spirits are working with them, and that's the nice and the freedom of this tradition for me, anyway.
It's really important to have, especially when learning at first, tools and a little bit of structure to help us to have these direct experiences. But yes, like Hank is saying, don't get too caught up on the specifics of whatever ritual or experience you're trying to have, and same thing, like we've mentioned this before, but like, don't get caught up too much on the words that we're talking about. It's the energy behind it and the experience we're pointing to. And same thing if you're whatever it is, if you're doing a certain kind of meditation, just because someone told you have to sit there and focus on the way the energy is moving in through the nose into the lungs and then out and then back and circulating or whatever, if you're doing that and all of a sudden you're just experiencing peace and awareness, don't take yourself out of that like peace and oneness experience just because you go, oh no, I'm supposed to be focusing on this and this. That's the actual direct experiences that are important. But at the same time, it's important to have some kind of structure in order to get there, I think.
Cool. A reminder, if anybody has questions, please do type them in the comments. Today, we kind of got off topic a little bit, but it's always on topic of consciousness, right? But we were talking about fear, and how about any tools specifically that you have that people could walk away from with today, that if they're starting to feel fear, what would you tell someone that was brand new to all this? What would be a great takeaway to deal with the feelings of fear as they come up?
Become curiously aware of the fear. And what I mean by that is, think about what I just said. So become curiously aware, like when we're kids and we're presented with something we've never experienced before. Maybe it's, the first time you ever saw a waterfall, right? You're so curiously aware of that. You're curious, what is that thing? And your awareness is just purely on that with all of your attention. You don't have any real preconceived notion of it since it's your first time experiencing it. So you're just curiously there, just as pure awareness, taking in that experience. And while that may sound like I'm describing a beautiful experience of a waterfall, we can do the same thing with our fearful experience. We can become curiously aware of it. So when you are having an experience of fear, just become curious in that moment as to what is it that I'm really feeling? And that sort of, what do I want to call it? Inquiry internally, the experience of that inquiry. You don't actually have to ask, what is this? But just really become aware and feel, what is it that I'm really feeling? That can take us out of that intense, fearful experience, and it can help us to sort of disidentify with it. Because it's only when we're identified that fear can pull us along for miles and miles. If we can become curiously aware and feel, okay, it's just a tightness in my chest, my heart's beating a little fast, and that's okay. Then for that moment we can step back, and when we bring that light of pure awareness in, that curious awareness, that fear will often dissolve. Nothing can really survive in the light of pure awareness. And the way to bring that in is just in that tiny little moment of seeing, becoming curiously aware in the moment that it's happening. If you can that's the one thing I would say. Curious awareness.
I love that. Curious awareness and something in the light of consciousness. What was that part again?
Oh, I don't know the words.
I have to go back, watch the replay. Okay.
Nothing can survive in the light of consciousness.
Nothing can survive in the light of consciousness. In terms
because if we're having, and I mean like things, identification with thoughts and emotions, right? It's the identification that causes us the suffering. If we're just having the direct experience, we're not identified with it, there's no suffering. And that identification with thought, emotion, or any experience that we have can't survive when we become purely aware of it.
Cool. And the one thing where I would tell someone to start is to ask the question, is it mine? Because perhaps it's not. And if it's not, then it's good to be aware. And then you just allow that energy to move through you, not to you, not from you. And to really start to look at it from the role of the observer, and observing that you're aware of the energy instead of having the experience of feeling what that energy is, because that's when you're naming it, you're claiming it. And so that would be the big tool I would say. Go ahead and ask, is it yours? And you might be surprised at 99% of the time that it's not. And it's someone else's or something else's, and you just happen to have an awareness. And then ask, well, could I be a contribution to that? Because if it's in your awareness, it's not necessarily your job to need to do something with it, but ask the question, do I have a contribution for this energy? And just allow energy to flow from source through you to whatever thing or person may be in need. And that's a very safe way to offer the energy from source, not your energy, but to give them a contribution where maybe it's going to bring them out of where they're having that experience of fear. And then you're actually not just aware of something, but you're also in a space where you can be a contribution to change and shift that fear or anxiety for someone else.
And see that as a beautiful gift that we're able to feel those experiences that other people have, and recognize that that gives us the opportunity, like Hank said, to help bring them out of it, because so many of us carry our fears and our anxieties with us alone, and we can feel very alone in our journey. So those of us who are more aware energetically, don't see, I hate that I feel everyone else's fear and anxiety. It's just so much of a burden. Don't see it that way. See it as a gift. I can feel that person's suffering. What can I do to help them? That's a beautiful thing that we're aware of that, because many people won't just share that. You may ask them how they are, and oftentimes people lie. Oh, that's great. Things are awesome. But you can feel no, they're not. So that affords us the opportunity, if we're in the right space and that person is also in the right space, to facilitate healing, even if that's just by listening to what they have to say.
The other thing would be to ask, when you're aware that, is there a medicine for me here? Is there a contribution for me here? Or what if it isn't yours, but you're noticing it? Then you could also ask the question, when have I felt like that before? Because that's going to give a cue to your other than conscious, to the cellular memory in your body, to percolate up, like, what might your experience have been that's even making this be on your radar. Because 90% of the time when we do have an awareness of something, the reason that we're noticing it is because there's something resonating in us that has a similar frequency, just like that deflector shield we were talking about earlier today. And so you can ask, when have I felt like that before? So let their energy go back to sender with consciousness, and then allow your own awareness to percolate what opportunities you might have for healing that may have felt similarly.
Absolutely. Is there anything, Hank, that you would, any last little bit you would leave people with, as far as, well, I guess we've sort of wrapped up how to get over fear, or how the ways we can deal with the experiences of fear. But anything you would leave people with in general on the topic of fear, any one little like nugget you would leave people with?
Well, remember that acronym from the very beginning: feeling excited and ready. Like, if you feel that you're afraid, like, really question, like, am I afraid? If I was totally aware of everything around this feeling, if I have full awareness of everything there is to know about this, would I be afraid, or would I simply be able to make a conscious choice? So that would be my biggest thing. Remember, if I am afraid, it's either someone else's, something else's, or I simply have not given myself permission to be aware of all the data. Because in awareness, or in the light, that nothing can survive, right? That fear can't survive if you have full awareness and consciousness around whatever it is.
Love it. Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we're wrapping up then. Please make comments. Let us know what topics you would like us to see for next time. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Nike.